r/AskReddit by Redmond Dtes. Who is the most evil person you have ever met in your entire life? Fortunately, he was also stupid. Danny, the dispatcher at my former taxi job. He thrived on conflict and loved creating hardship for both drivers and customers alike. I watched him deliberately send a taxi late because the woman emphasized how she couldn't be late to her doctor's appointment. He hung up and sorta chuckled and said, "Well, she's definitely gonna be late now." He shorted me work and joked that he just wanted to see how long it would take me to go to jail for being behind on child support payments. As he was dying of cancer, I was tempted to send his cancer a get well card for having Danny. My best friend's dad. He would beat all three of the boys and their mom. He would get wasted on crack and alcohol and trespass on random people's yards and destroy their property and steal their motor vehicles. Crash them and ditch the scene. Once we all hit a certain age, the boys would ask me to hang out pretty often. Not only because we all had a good time, but I've always been a lot larger than their dad, and he almost always never put his hands on them. I could see the bit of fear in their eyes any time I left to go back home. This man is the perfect embodiment of evil on earth. He's beaten death in severe car wrecks, alcohol poisoning, overdoses, and cancer on multiple occasions. And after decades of this lifestyle, still roams a local city as a bum. Getting wasted and destroying property. Seemed to have negatively influenced the two younger brothers because they are slowly becoming their father. And they haven't had their sweet caring mother to turn to because she passed about 12 years ago. My former neighbor, who as an adult went to jail for raping his 12-year-old cousin. My stepmother. The nicest thing she ever did for me was trying to drown me at the beach. A guy I went to high school with worked for a direct medical device sales company, and he would intentionally delay the delivery of things like catheters and colostomy bags until the patients were literally emailing begging for them. I've heard that he's done a ton of other messed up stuff as well. Haven't seen him since high school, and the guy is still the most evil person I have ever come across. I spent my last 2 years in the military as a master at arms, military police. Met a lot of bad people, but the one that stands out was a NCO arrested on base for domestic violence. The investigation on that case got borderline insane. He was convicted of physical abuse of his spouse, sexual abuse of his two daughters, 11 and 8 years old, rape of his neighbor, and sexual abuse of his neighbor's daughter, aged 9. He went to Leavenworth and I hope he's still there. I was friends with William James Vahey's son and slept at their house as a kid. He was the most prolific child molester of our time according to the FBI. Thankfully I was not in his target age group. As is common with accounts like this, I remember him being really nice. I met a girl who killed her two twin babies with a sledgehammer. Evilest stuff I've ever heard in my life. My mother-in-law. And I know it's a trope for men to dislike their mother-in-law, but she has never done anything to me directly. Instead, she routinely physically and emotionally abused my wife in ways we're still unpacking in our 30s. She emotionally manipulates, and, we suspect, baby-trapped my father-in-law. She has alienated every person that ever gave her kindness because she takes advantage of people. She has used her husband's chronic health issues to gain sympathy with people and then takes as much money as she can before losing people's numbers. And to top it all off, she has totaled 6 cars in as many years, thankfully never hurting anyone else, but it's only a matter of time. She's currently laid up in the hospital because this last wreck almost killed her, and that would have been a kindness. My stepfather physically and mentally abusive towards me for the entire time he lived with my family. Still cannot do any gardening or yard work without half expecting to have lit cigarettes flicked at me or having a rake or shovel handle bounced off me when I make a mistake. Physically, mentally, and sexually abused my younger sister, aged 8 to 11. The night my mother discovered the sexual abuse, she confronted him. He punched her in the face, knocked her down and raped her. I lay petrified, in my bed and listened. I did nothing to help either one of them. 40 years later, I still loathe my cowardice. He died in 2013, and I hope the cancer that took him hurt, and if there is a hell, I hope he's there still suffering as his insides rot. My cousin. He murdered my uncle and completely dismembered his body. The headmaster of my old school, back in the 1980s. Who also happened to be an ordained minister of the church. Some years after he retired, he was in the local newspaper. Apparently he'd spent a good chunk of his career molesting small children. Someone had, many years later, found the courage to report him. Knew a kid growing up that was never all there. He was always angry at everyone for no reason, and would take it out on them physically. He spent a lot of time in detention. After high school, he was arrested for kidnapping a girl and holding her for a few days until the cops found him. He spent a few years in prison. Within a month of him getting out of prison, he kidnapped and raped a teenage girl and then beat the crap of her daily for several weeks. He's back in prison. I did a short stint in prison and was sharing a room with a guy who shot his wife point blank in the head before pushing her out of his truck, leaving her there in the woods to die. We found out when we were all watching the news in the common area when they covered his attempted murder. She lived because the bullet grazed her. He was transferred shortly after. A dude I started with as an IT engineer. Scottish man in his mid-50s. Seemed like a good bloke. He was funny and was good at his job. A few years later he dropped his phone into a repair shop who found CP content on it. And he was the one producing it. He ended up hanging himself, thankfully. A friend of mine once lived in the same building as Britain's worst sex trafficker. The dude taught me how to juggle, used to buy weed off him. Literally had no idea he involved in anything like that until there was a TV show about him. Guy I went to elementary and middle school with was just recently in the news for poisoning and killing his wife to collect life insurance. One of the smartest guys I ever met, but something was always a little off about him. That's all, folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more? Have a nice evening.